Okay. Okay. We're back. We're fine. Ah. Had some mess-ups. The app crashed, and uh, but we're back anyway. Okay. Well, to start it off. Oh, hello to a late night reading of Straight On Till Morning. I'm gonna be reading chapters 14 to 16. And I do want to apologize for not streaming as much as I should have been. Life happened, and yeah, it, it was just a lot that happened between the span of my last stream, my last reading, up until now. I'm just not having the energy. What accent is that? The energy. God. I'm just not having the energy to actually get into streaming. I've been having really poor sleep. Yeah. Work, school. I'm not doing summer school because of work and how crazy we get during the summer. So I'm not doing summer school. But yeah, both of those things are my major issues. Uh, my dog from last year passed away. Now I got four chihuahuas. I blame my mom for that one. But I mean, hey, we got them from somebody who knew that they weren't gonna be able to take care of them. So it's a blessing in disguise. But anyway, I want to um say thank you to that person. I apologize. I forget your username on YouTube who commented, who was actually one of the first people to comment on any of my readings, talking about how much they love my readings. And I want to say thank you so very much for your comment. Um, and I love that you love my readings, even though a lot of these words I cannot pronounce. So, still, thank you also very much. So, let's get into it. All right. So, picking up where we left off from last time. Um, if you don't remember from last time, I'm gonna do a quick little recap. I reread a couple of pages of the last chapter of chapter 13, and oh wow, that just sounds so unlucky. But anyway, um, I read a couple of pages and I finally remembered where we were. Um, Wendy was trying to find Peter Pan, and she remembered one of the stories talking about, his hideout. And she was hoping to find Peter Pan there, but instead she found the Lost Boys, all of the Lost Boys. And they were telling her how they haven't seen Peter Pan in a while because they were mad at one of the boys. Oh, because he was mad at one of the boys because he wanted to do something different and not do the same thing that they usually do every single day. He wanted change. Peter Pan associated change with growing up. So he got mad, he threw a little temper tantrum, and he hasn't been back at the hideout in a while. And they are suggesting that Wendy go to the Mermaid Lagoon because they know that that's where Peter Pan will sometimes go to because the girls like him there. And if you remember from the actual movie, Tinkerbell talks to the mermaids to get them to try to get them to try and drown Wendy, and they were happy to do so. They did it without question. Okay, so there's no doubt in my mind that Peter Pan is probably there. But if I remember correctly from the beginning of the book, he was sleeping in a tree. The dude fell asleep in a tree. So, um, let's continue on with Wendy's journey and let's see where it takes her. All right, chapter 14. I'm going to take this off. You're distracting. Chapter 14. The Lost Girls. Luna chose that moment to burst onto the scene. She had found one of the secret doors to the hideout almost immediately and scrambled down, much more elegantly than Wendy. She barked happily, pleased with her entrance and audience. "Wow, a wolf!" Cubby said in awe. "He's so fierce!" Skippy Skipper sighed. "She's mine," Wendy said proudly, going over to pet her. "And I'm hers." I'm sorry, I forgot the voice I had for Wendy. I think I was doing like a little girl British accent. But I don't think I'm gonna be able to do it tonight. So y'all gonna get what you get. "That's incredible. She's beautiful," Slightly said, a little jealous but more impressed. As she ran her fingers through over the wolf's coat, Wendy said with dismay, as it was Wendy. I'm sorry, dyslexia. Wendy saw with dismay it was covered in burrs and mud. Luna panted a little laboriously and leaned extra hard against her human friend. It was obvious she was exhausted. Still part puppy, she was too young to realize when she had worn herself out. Honestly, Wendy was feeling a little done in as well. Flying was hard work, and so was being kidnapped by pirates. "Poor girl, Olivia must go on alone," she said, a little peevishly. She couldn't help it. "I think we will require a bit of rest and refreshment here first." The fairy looked outraged and put her hands on her hips. She made a very obvious walking motion with two of her fingers, then pointed to the door. "No, we have to keep going." "I'm sorry. You might be used to spending most of your day on wing," Wendy said politely. "But while it's glorious sport, like something out of a dream, well, unlike a dream, it's a bit exhausting, like all sports, really. And Luna had to run here on foot. She's had it." The fairy frowned at Luna and then tossed her head, like she was saying, "I apologize, hold on a second." Y'all didn't experience that eloquent voice, and then you heard all country. Like she was saying, "Fine, all right, but only for your wolf, not for you." "You heard her, boys. It's tea time," Slightly cried, in a sort of reverse of Snow White's story. The boys. I'm sorry, I had flashback as soon as I read Snow White. Ooh, PTSD. I did not like that movie. I'm sorry. The boys ran around and gathering what provisions they could, like dwarfs. Oh, Jesus. Desperately making everything nice for their lady. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am not. But I'm sorry. The twins quickly filled a basket with berries and fruit. Cubby found a big bowl of nuts. Slightly blew embers into a lovely little fire and put the kettle on. Where they had gotten the kettle, a highly decorated affair of blue and gold enamel, was a mystery. kill somebody for that kettle. They probably killed somebody for this kettle, bro. Toodles somehow managed to carry and set out a stack of mismatched cups, wood, bone china, and coconut shell. Skipper brought out a pot of golden comb honey. While this happy chaos was happening, Wendy took the opportunity to approach the ferry alone in a very slightly quieter part of the hideout. Tinkerbell, she ventured. So that is your name. The fairy looked at her in surprise, then grudgingly nodded her head. Did you did you really keep Peter from going to London? On purpose? Tinkerbell looked away, but she didn't disagree. Wendy was torn. More than anything, she wanted this beautiful little fairy to be her friend, to like her back, to initiate her into the secret world of flowers and fairy folk. But she had to know the truth. Did you really do it because you were jealous of me? Tinkerbell crossed her arms and scowled at her. She jingled something disdainful. Of me? Wendy repeated, indicating her torn dress, her size, her brown hair, her overall very unfairy-like plainness. Tinkerbell nodded, a little less certainly. Well, I think that's very flattering. Perhaps even the highest compliment I've ever been paid, no matter how backhanded. I thank you. The fairy rolled her eyes. Wendy sighed. She sat down heavily on a barrel. If we were being completely honest here, and I feel we should be since we're companions in this strange adventure, then I should tell you straight. I do like Peter Pan. I used to worship him, in fact. I used to dream about him, too. Oh, this is getting a little creepy. I suppose if he had actually come to me, I might have, well, who knows? He's all I ever cared about, really, besides mother and father and Michael and John and Nana, of course. What was this little girl planning on doing? Well, no, then again, in this story, she is a woman. Like, she is of legal age. Oh my god, this. I'm sorry, that was the tea kettle that they mysteriously found and killed somebody for. Going off. Tinkerbell had an aha look on her face and waggled an accusing finger at the human girl. But I never even saw him while I was awake, Tinkerbell, Wendy pointed out. These thoughts of him were just that, all in my imagination. I am very sorry it upset you to come and listen to my stories. I was never even aware that you and Peter were there. You have such you have had such amazing, real adventures with him here in Neverland. All I ever had was his shadow. Tinkerbell blinked. It was obviously an entirely new idea for her. It was a very naughty thing you did to Peter out of jealousy, Tinkerbell, preventing him from getting his own shadow. And what I did was naughty too, trading that shadow to his enemy to come here. Far more naughty, really, especially since it seems to have resulted in putting all of Neverland in danger. We both have a lot to answer for. Apologies and reparations to make. Together. The fairy looked outraged at this suggestion of any similarity between them. But then she recovered herself, crossing her arms again. Go on, she seemed to say. And look, here we are, talking about Peter while he isn't even here at all, in person or in shadow form. Did I say foam or form? I'm in the same form. form. That's what I meant. Let's continue. Wendy said with a laugh, "Is he really the king of Neverland? After all, invading our conversations and making everything about himself, even when he's not present. Who can't stop talking about him? The Lost Boys are depressed without him. You are constantly jealous around him, and I sold him out when I couldn't have him. It's ridiculous, really, the effect he has on all our lives. Think about." The fairy jumped at the sudden direct address. Wendy was looking at her sternly, full of purpose, shoulders back and jaw firm. Sorry, it took me a minute to turn the page. Let's continue. You and I must resolve not to. Hold up. You and I must resolve not to discuss him any longer, at least until everything else is settled and we have properly saved Neverland. Surely the two of us have other things we could talk about that don't involve a boy. Other things that warrant our attention. Pirates, flying, the top of getting this shadow back, beating Captain Hook. The adventures we have. Our lives. The life of a fairy. The life of a plain human girl. That would be more than enough for many hours of solid conversation. So, enough talk about him for now. Are we agreed?" The fairy looked at her as if it were a weird thing to ask, and Wendy supposed it was a bit odd. Wasn't Peter the very reason they were thrown together in the first place? But then, as the thought really wound its way through her mind, the fairy relaxed. She shook her head from side to side, as if sloshing the idea around and physically measuring it. Finally, she nodded. She put out her tiny hand. Wendy grinned, thrilled to have made some headway with the fairy at last. She very carefully took the tiny hand between her index finger and thumb and gave it a gentle but solid shake. "Excellent! This should make our task that much easier, as well as our working together." Tinkerbell narrowed her eyes at that. Maybe the idea of actively working together with the human girl, or at least expressing it out loud, was a bit much. But she didn't jingle or otherwise comment. Whatever their feelings toward each other or Peter were, they had a job to do. The tea was filling, but strange. Wendy could have done with some proper sandwiches, pastries, or crackers. Why the hell did I say it like that? And she had to sneak the questionable day-old rabbit meat to Luna, who snapped at it discreetly and happily. I'm sorry, who snapped it up? My bad. But she appreciatively drank the strange reddish-brown decoction of leaves and twigs the Lost Boy swore was just like proper tea if you didn't think about it too much. Oh my god. Somebody get these little boys some struggalos. And in truth, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't East India Company. The, you bougie little girl. I'm sorry. Let me say this right. But she bougie. And in truth, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't East India Company Darjeeling. It, oh Lord, it had a warm, almost cinnamon. I can't say the goddamn word. Cinnamon. This is not a stutter, okay? I promise. This is not a stutter. This is just I can't talk. Cinnamon. Cin- Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Cinnamony taste. Okay, there we go. Sad I have to say the cereal. Luna had a big bowl of fresh cold water, and Toodles insisted on having his tea the same way, on the floor. After that, and several stale biscuits, plus a little rest, and more tummy rubs than any puppy could really ask for from a hideout full of instantly devoted fans, it was finally time to leave. Outside, the air was as fresh and bracing as Neverland air ever was. A great day for flying. But while the two girls were getting ready to say their goodbyes, Wendy noticed that Skipper kept looking at her strangely, almost in fascination. Is there something wrong? Wendy asked, of course, immediately needing to fix whatever problem there was. Nothing, Skipper said, turning away so she couldn't see his face. Wendy wasn't the girl at parties who caused boys to blush, but she had seen it happen with others, like at the spring dance when John was caught off guard by a hello from Alice Cots Wallington. I'm sorry, you let your little brother blush over a girl whose last name is Cox Wallington? He had turned red, turned away, and choked into his pouch. And choked into his punch. This wasn't that. Skipper didn't seem to be blushing, exactly. There was little wonder or fear in his eyes. He grew nervous under her scrutiny. Come on, you can tell me, Wendy prodded. Is it that you actually want to join me and think about? Looking for Peter Pan, I mean. She tried to keep the hope out of her voice. No, he cried. He immediately looked down and lowered his voice to his usual mumble. I don't want to see Peter right now. Maybe not even after he's finished being angry or whatever. Maybe not ever. His voice. It hit Wendy all at once. Skipper's constant staring at her, and his reluctance to speak. The especially baggy clothing he wore and soft, almost babyish face he had despite his height. The obvious desire not to be noticed by the new girl, while being unable to take his eyes off her. Skipper! You're a girl! Wendy exclaimed. The lost boys all turned around at her cry. Skipper swallowed and hardened her look, but that was all. Sort of. Slight, Slightly said with a shrug. What do you mean, sort of? Wendy demanded. She ain't like you, Cubby said. Not like me. She's exactly like me. She doesn't wear, one twin began. Dresses and ribbons, the other one finished. She doesn't talk like you. Her hair's short. She doesn't feel like a mother. Yes, but those are all just externalities. Oh, sweet Jesus. Externalities, Wendy protested. She and I both have. Well, nothing that could be said aloud in mixed company. How old was Skipper? Old enough to be reminded of these things once a month. Ooh. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting that this is a dark retelling. This is a dark what if of the story. I'm so sorry. Skipper's eyes were tortoiseshell. With tortoise shells. Her eyelashes short and black. Wendy found herself imagining the lost boy with long hair and a proper girlish curl down her back, a ribbon around her neck, and a simple but fetching strolling flock, and realized it would have been ridiculous. This girl was perfectly at ease and comfortable in her jacket and animal get-up. Anything less freeing would have forced her to stand weirdly or make her look like a clown. But how are you a lost boy? Wendy finally asked, baffled. Always wanted to be one, Skipper answered, voice strong now that she had decided to speak. I saw Peter come and take boys away from the orphanage. Only boys. Everyone knew that. Only boys could become lost boys. So I became a boy. The nurses forgot. They hated me. They hated who I was when I was a girl. They could barely read, so I changed my name in the books. I was a boy. And then, when Peter came, he took me. Everyone was quiet during her little speech, as if it were as natural and acceptable an escape plan as selling Peter's shadow. But why did you want to leave the home? Did they... Wendy leaned in close and lowered her voice. Did they hurt you? As a girl? Is that why you wanted to leave? Skipper gave her a look of shock and revulsion. No! I just wanted to be free, like all of us. To not have rules, not brush my teeth, and hunt, and fish, and have fun all day. To never grow up. Ever. Right on, Skipper, Cubby cheered. That's my lost boy. But she's not, Wendy started to correct, slightly smiled at her confusion. She is a lost boy, he said gently. 100%, like all of us. But that's just the problem. Skipper said sorrowfully, I'm not exactly a boy. All right, Wendy said uncertainly. But if it's always been like this, why are you worried about it now? Skipper shrugged, but looked a little desperate. Peter don't know. Not really. And Peter wants to kick slightly out 'cause he wants new things. Peter's always talking about silly girls, stupid girls. There are so many, all over Neverland. And you, in London. And I guess Tink says he likes you? But you're not like him, you know? Wendy considered this. True, Peter would never ask someone like Wendy to be a lost boy. He never did, in fact. What would happen if she suddenly popped up in his crew? I see your point, she said slowly. I think, however, we can get this all straightened out. No need to worry about it right now. We'll find Peter. We'll find Peter, retrieve his shadow, beat the pirates, have him make up slightly, and then deal with you, however you wish, all right? But we'll wait until things are a bit calmer, and he sees things with a clearer head. Skipper nodded a little unhappily. But she had the look of a child who has just cried and is in the feeling calm and being what the hell? Mollified stage. Tears have been sniffed away. Wendy wondered if the girl ever cried, had ever cried in her strange short life, but at least in front of other people. But, she couldn't stop herself from asking, from leaning in and whispering, don't you find it a little bothersome to be with these wild boys all the time? For an answer, Skipper opened her mouth and let out a terrifyingly loud burp. That's my girl. Nice one, Skip, Slightly said, touching his hat and bowing to her. The rest of the lost boys cackled and laughed and cheered and tried to follow suit with considerably less success. Well, Wendy said, trying not to appear flustered or embarrassed. I suppose that answers that. Mermaid Lagoon is that way. When the two of you are ready, Slightly said, pointing to the southeast. How will you go? There's a path east and south beyond the Tonal Springs. Or will you be trying to sail across the Bay of Skull Islands? Neither, Wendy said politely, and perhaps just a little smugly. We'll be taking the other. And with that, she neatly rose off her toes and a few feet into the air. The Lost Boys cheered, crowed, and golf. Go, go. Oh, my dear Lord. Go. You know what? They cheered and crowed. I can't say the last word. I don't know what it is at that. Tank, you gave an outsider fairy dust? Slightly called in mock outrage. My, how far down in the world we have come. Tinkerbell stuck out her tongue at him, slightly made a very inappropriate, rude gesture back at her that Wendy had only seen thugs and urchins use. But he was laughing. The fairy tossed her head derisively, I guess. Wendy wondered about their interactions. Tinkerbell had her own room in the Lost Boys' hideout, yet she seemed to treat them as meanly, or at least indifferently, as she did everyone else. For their part, the Lost Boys seemed to not care what she thought, or they simply accepted it was part of her touchy personality. Maybe it's not just me, Wendy thought. Maybe the fairy was naturally prickly and had bad tempered to everyone. But she doubted if Tinkerbell had ever physically attacked the Lost Boy, the way she had assaulted her back at the clearing with the crystal creature. And she couldn't imagine Skipper acting the way Wendy had, stepping away and apologizing. The Lost Boy probably would have cracked Tinkerbell across the pate for such behavior. You, I'm sorry. What the heck just happened to me? Luna yawned, turning herself around several times before settling down heavily next to Toodles. The little boy laughed and rubbed his face into her fur. The wolf looked wearily up at Wendy. Are we really taking off again so soon? Just look at what a lovely group of playmates we have here. I could use a knot, too. Can we keep her? The twins begged immediately. Just for now, she's so tired. Nobody can keep her, Wendy said. She's her own person. And yet, in so much as Luna was anyone's, she was Wendy's. She was Wendy's dream dog, the perfect companion for adventures in Neverland. But was she a pet? Perhaps something created in Neverland was never really unlaundered to begin with. And the wolf really was just a puppy, a very large, very tired-looking one at that. Tinkerbell, Wendy said as casually as she could, relishing the use of the fairy's name and the intimacy it brought. What do you think about Luna? Perhaps she is looking a little exhausted. Tinkerbell considered the wolf, then nodded slowly. She pointed at the Lost Boys and shrugged. What better place for a puppy to stay? All right, then. Goodbye for now, Wendy said, dipping down to give Luna a big hug around her neck and shoulders. The wolf licked her all over. Then the girl sighed and rose into the air. Tinkerbell followed a few feet away, of course. At last, Wendy thought. We two have just shared our first completely neutral conversation. No anger, no reminiscence, no insult jingles. It is certainly a step. A step. She waved at the lost boys. It was lovely meeting all of you. See, send us a signal as soon as you sorted stuff out with Peter, Slightly called. The lost boys leapt and capered and yelled after them. Tootles and the twins broke into a wild twirling circle dance. Skipper gave a shy wave and a half smile. Cubby howled like a wolf rather than the bear he thought he was. Luna joined in, a great doggy smile on her muzzle. It was a charming scene, and Wendy dearly hoped that would not be the last she would see of her beloved wolf. And just because of that, at some point this wolf is gonna die. I promise you, I promise you, I promise y'all. If this wolf dies at some point in this book, if it's before the end of this book, I promise I will shut this book closed. I will shut this book closed, and we will read a different book. We will read a different book. I promise you. Lord, Jesus. Now chapter 14. All right, we're in chapter 15. The Water Girls. Once they were out of the jungle, Tinkerbell chose to hug the curving coast rather than cross the water, which would have been faster. And when Wendy took a detour over the waves to get a closer look at a whale spouting, she realized why. The mild breezes that kept her cool on the beach were whipped into much stronger versions of themselves over the ocean. She found herself suddenly pitched out of control by a rogue gust and in danger of being battered out to sea, or of a good dunking. A bit too Icarus there, she chastised herself, using her arms to somewhat unprettily flap her way back to land. Tinkerbell wisely only skimmed over the shallowest wavelets that encroached on the beach. She dipped a finger into the surface as she went, throwing up a pretty little spray that made rainbows in the golden light. Fish leapt over a wake, flashing silver. Wendy caught her breath at the thoughtless beauty of it all. The fairy didn't care how others perceived what she did. She just did. Whatever she wanted, the results were often grace and spectacle. When Wendy did, however, when Wendy did whatever she wanted, people hated it, like at parties, like at Christmas, when she had been so full of the beauty of the season and the festive caroling music that she had made the mistake of enthusiastically telling everyone how a Neverland holiday might be run, utterly unaware, at first, that not only did the people there not care about the holidays of an imaginary world, or its cleverly invented trappings, but also that they were more than a little horrified that these stories came out of the mouth of a 16-year-old girl, and not a child. She had also been unaware at the time that her behavior would become the prime topic of jokes and gossip for the next season. Back in the reality of Neverland, the dark peaks of the Black Dragon Mountains glowered in the far distance, ominous smoke circling them like a scarf. Gray and brown twists of vapor rolled around each other like serpents. The air so thick it had texture and mass. Everything together fooled the eye into thinking there was an actual dragon, the size of a city, slithering through the landscape. Maybe after they found Peter Pan and saved Neverland, Wendy could explore these mountains and look for real dragons. She wondered how long the fairy dust would last. It would, of course, be far more fun with someone else along, even a foul-tempered fairy. The northern side of the Mermaid Lagoon was a rocky, leisurely half-moon with a strip of jungle clinging to its stony spine. Flickering through green shadows were bright birds. I'm sorry, excuse me. Ooh, I had a burp. Goodness. Where was I? Flickering through green shadows were bright birds in orange, green, and yellow flocks. Here the clean, salty slap of the sea air was replaced by a heavy atmosphere of exotic blooms and ancient, earthly decay. Tinkerbell headed for a gray ledge studded with palm trees, a hidden platform for which they could survey the water below. She landed silently and then crawled to the edge to peep over the side, keeping her body flat and out of sight from the ground. Wendy did her best to emulate the fairy, but her long skirt kept tangling in her legs. Frustrated and in a huff, she decided it was safe with no one but a girl fairy around to see her, and hiked up the dress between her knees, ignoring Tink's eye roll at her awkward maneuvers. She leaned over the lip of the rock for a look. Goodness gracious, I don't know what's wrong with me. A paradisical, I guess, lagoon lay below them. The water was an unbelievable, unreal turquoise, its surface so still that every feature of the bottom could be admired in magnified detail. Colorful pebbles, bright red kelp, fish as pretty and colorful as the jungle birds. A waterfall on the far side fell softly from a height of at least 20 feet. A triple rainbow graced its frothy bottom. Large boulders stuck out of the water at seemingly random intervals, black and sun-warmed and extremely inviting, like they had been placed there on purpose by some ancient giant. On these were the mermaids. Wendy gasped at their beauty. Their tails were all colors of the rainbow, somehow managing not to look tawdry or clownish. Deep royal blue, glittery emerald green, coral red, and in purple, slick and wet, and as beautifully real as a salmon Wendy's father once caught on holiday in Scotland, shining in vol, vol, I can't say words, voluptuously alive. The mermaids were rather scandalously naked, except for a few who wore carefully placed shells and starfish, although the hair did afford some measure of decorum as it trailed down their torsos. The locks were long and thick and sinuous, and mostly the same shades as their tails. Some had very tight coiled curls, some had braids, some had decorated their tresses with limpets and bright, I can never say this flower, hib, hibiscus? Hibiscus? I think, I said hibiscus flowers. I said it. Their human skins were familiar tones, dark brown to pale white, pink and beige and golden, and everything in between. Their eyes were also familiar eye colors, but strangely clear and flat, either depthless or extremely shallow, depending on how one stared. They sang, they brushed their hair, they played in the water. In short, they did everything mythical and magical mermaids were supposed to do, laughing and splashing as they did. "Oh," Wendy whispered, "there," and then she stopped. Tinkerbell was giving her a funny look, an unhappy, funny look. The mermaids were beautiful, indescribably perfectly beautiful. They glowed and were radiant, and seemed to suck up every ray of sun and sparkle of water. Wendy found she had no interest looking anywhere else. "Sometimes when he's down, he goes to Mermaid Lagoon." Wasn't that what Cubby had said? Of course, it made sense. There was a few moments of watching these mysterious beings made Wendy feel light and happy all over. But imagine having to compete with them. Even if the fairy and Peter Pan weren't involved romantically, this would have been a hard act to follow. What kind of girl, even just a friend, wouldn't grow jealous of a crowd of the most extraordinarily delightful creatures on the planet? Ones to whom your best friend turned whenever he was down. Stupid girls. There are so many, all over Neverland, and you in London. Skipper had said that. But who knew what other sirens populated this island? Sulkies, fairy princesses, normal princesses, pirate queens, dryads, naiads. Minnie decided to say nothing about the exquisite beauty of the mermaids. Ah, there they are. But I don't see Peter Pan, she said instead, narrowing her eyes and casting her gaze to every obvious shadow and cranny. Tinkerbell shook her head slowly, thoughtfully. Perhaps we should. Wendy's voice trailed off. The old Wendy would have stood up and marched on down to find where he had gone, questioning the pretty mermaids closely. The new Wendy, Neverland Wendy, paused. She had been held hostage by black-hearted pirates when she had thought she made a simple deal. She had nearly been killed when crossing a harmless-looking clearing. And these beautiful, innocent-looking mermaids, in their beautiful lagoon, were they actually what they seemed? Were their teeth just a little sharper than those of their human counterparts? Perhaps we should continue to surveil the situation from up here, Mindy said finally, sitting up straighten sitting up straight backed, her legs crossed. She cupped her hands around her mouth. Hello down there. Good afternoon. Immediately the mermaids froze. Some dove down into the water. They made S's of their bodies like snakes, keeping their heads below the surface. All fixed her with their large, unblinking wet eyes. The one with the one on the largest rock alone stayed where she was. She had tightly braided purple locks and gripped the sides of her gray stone with fingers that now seemed a little more claw-like than human. Sorry, I'm drooling. She relaxed when her eyes found Wendy. So did all the other mermaids, as if they all saw her at the same time, as one. Don't be afraid, Wendy called. I'm not going to hurt you. Oh, that's nice, the leader said. Her tail began to swish behind her on the rock, the tip of her fin just touching the water, flapping it so little droplets spit into the air. The other mermaids began slowly moving again as well, treading water or beating their tails. They kept their faces halfway below the surface, however, noses firmly beneath. It was more than a little disturbing. While Mindy knew logically that mermaids could breathe underwater, it seemed very unnatural to hold themselves that way. No bubbles bubbled up. Humans are always trying to catch us, the purple one said, pouting. Nasty pirates. I'm not a pirate, Wendy said quickly. I've just escaped from being their prisoner, in fact. Nasty pirates, another one said, pink-haired, kicking herself above the water for a moment so she could speak, her tail working and sliding. A little surprising, because serpents can't speak, of course, Wendy thought. Then she wondered what had suddenly made her think of serpents. Humans want to steal from us a lock of our beautiful hair, a red-headed one growled. Her locks weren't merely ginger. They were a flaming tomato poppy red. This girl had named 3 different types of red. Red as a ladybug, or the lips of some inappropriately dressed woman. Make it 5. Oh, I wouldn't do that, Wendy promised. Though your hair is very beautiful. It's the most beautiful hair I've ever seen. Tinkerbell rolled her eyes, but the mermaids rolled in the water, smiling and hissing. They seemed to like what she had said quite a bit. We can't see you very well, Purple One called out. We can't see your hair. Our eyes don't work very well above water. Come down so we can see you. Yes. Sorry. Yes, a green-haired beauty begged. So we can see your hair. So we can comb it. So we can brush it. The mermaid swam back and forth in the lagoon, pleading and making dizzying patterns. They were beautiful and plaintive and hypnotizing to watch. Wendy's heart tugged with a terrible pain. Such a scene had only existed in her wildest dreams, most secret fantasies, ones she hadn't even told her brothers about. How would she make friends with a beautiful mermaid? And the two would only comb each other's hair and laugh and sing, and maybe the mermaid would make fun of her voice. But Wendy could manage simple hymns and popular songs, all right. She was no siren. And then they would trade combs. Wendy would give the mermaid the silver-handled brush the darlings had given her for Christmas one year, and the mermaid would give her an ivory comb, or maybe one made from a fish skeleton with tiny white translucent teeth. It's a possibility. And they would forever remain friends, even if they were far apart. They would think of each other every time they brushed their hair. Wendy wanted nothing more than to lean over and plunge into the water below, to sit on a rock, to have them do her hair in proper mermaid style, long and down and flowing, with a flower or sea star for decoration. But their enticements were a little overmuch, their teeth a little sharp. Oh, I would dearly love to, after I've asked a few questions, Mindy said apologetically. What? The leader called out, putting her hand to her ear. I'm afraid I can't hear you. I said I have a few questions. The mermaid was silent. All of them were silent. They stared at her without blinking. It was like she had reached a dead end in a game. Minnie groaned inwardly. I will come down to talk to you, Wendy said, regretting every word. But not to the water's edge. I'm afraid of falling in, you see. I'm not a terribly good swimmer. She thought it was a good story, but Tinkerbell shook her head and slapped a hand over her face. There was another ledge just a little bit below the one they sat on that still seemed a safe distance from the water. Wendy clambered down to it as neatly as she could, trying not to further tear her already ruined dress. Neverland was not easy on one's clothes. Perhaps that's why the little fairy shirt was all ragged at the hem. No, she made it that way. I saw the movie. She made it that way. If Wendy wasn't careful, she wound up in animal skins and purloined gear like the Lost Boys. Or, heavens forfend, as naked as the mermaids. Tinkerbell was wary, taking a long, lingering moment before drifting into a lazy spiral down to where Wendy now stood 4 or 5 feet above the water. She crossed her arms, upset that they had given in even this much. No, excuse me. But the mermaids leapt and played and enjoyed this development, swimming up close and almost under Wendy, and then away again on their backs like otters. What are you wearing? Take it off this moment. You can't swim in that. I do not plan on swimming any time soon. As I mentioned before, I cannot swim very well, Wendy said primly. And anyway, we came here with rather urgent business. Bah! The blue-haired mermaid stuck out her lip and splashed water with the tip of her tail so expertly that it hit Wendy squarely in the face. The mermaids laughed and teetered and dove and flipped. "Here's to business," another one hissed, hitting her tail even harder on the water. This time, Wendy managed to cover her face, but it was a much larger volume of water drenching her head and her hair. It was a hot day and the water was cool, so it wasn't the most unpleasant thing at first, but the jungle air at the edge of the lagoon was close, and her dress stuck to her in clumps now, not likely to dry any time in the near future. Her shadow seemed outraged. She shook herself from top to bottom, and wrung herself out like a towel, throwing little shadow droplets everywhere. Tinkerbell peeked out from a large monster leaf she had managed to duck behind. Her eyes widened in wonder at the giant salty droplets that rained down her green shield. And then she noticed a swapping wet human girl. She giggled, pointing. All right, Wendy said gamely, trying to keep her smile. Her shadow straightened herself out. Ooh, 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 ooh. Hold up. Wait a minute. I ain't finna drop nothing. Yeah, you finna go right there. Sorry, I almost dropped my phone on the floor. Her shadow straightened herself out and set herself back in place behind Wendy, but very behind Wendy, keeping her as a sort of bulwark against more splashes of shadow water. Very funny, but really, I'm here for a rather serious quest. You see, Peter Pan has Peter Pan. The red-haired one sighed, flipping herself onto her back and swimming dreamily across the lagoon. That Peter Pan, a green-haired one whistled. What do you want to know of Peter Pan? The purple-haired one, still on the rock, asked, eyes narrowing. Pink-haired one swam up close to Wendy, near the bottom of her ledge, listening intently. Well, he and I have some things to sort out, Wendy stammered. She didn't want to admit that she was responsible for his shadow now being in the hands of the pirates, whom the mermaids obviously feared and hated, and they didn't seem to have a great attention span. It would be difficult to make it all the way to the end when she explained how she was trying to make I said it correctly before, but I can't say it now. That is sad. Repro reparations reparations for what she had done. The pink-haired one grinned strangely up her. Yes? Wendy asked politely, but the mermaid just fixed her with giant caramel eyes and held up a vine draped over her hands. I don't understand, Wendy said. What? Suddenly the mermaid yanked. The vine snapped taut, and the other end clung to a tree that was behind Wendy. She was thrown head first into the water. Not the best swimmer, even in calm situations. Wendy panicked, throwing her arms over her face as if expecting another splash. She hit the lagoon in the worst sort of tangled position, mouth open as she tried to cry out. Salt water immediately ran down her throat and up her nose. She choked. She coughed and choked and sneezed, flailing her arms around and desperately trying to right herself. Her dress swirled and caught around her legs and waist, tangling her limbs utterly and weighing her down. Her toes touched the bottom. This shocked her into thinking again, and she kicked off it towards the surface. Help! Wendy called out as soon as her mouth was out of the water, instead of breathing, which might have been a better call. A mermaid took this opportunity to grab her hair and yank her head back. Mindy's lower half flipped up as her torso went backward underwater, forcing a river's worth of water up her nose. She coughed and floundered, opening her eyes underwater. Opening her eyes underwater didn't cause any extreme discomfort, although what she saw did, as sinuous forms of mermaids cutting back and forth through the current, quick as knives. She tried to paddle to the surface, old Les finally kicking in. She pushed her legs hard, hoping to connect one hoping hoping to connect with one of the glittering slick bodies. Her left foot did, and it was just enough to propel her to the surface. She didn't waste her chance this time. She sucked in a deep breath of air. The mermaids leapt and were poised around her, their grins hard and white. Their mouths seemed a little wider than they should have been, their teeth even sharper. One of John's random facts popped in her to pop my sweet baby Jesus. Y'all drink some water. Stay hydrated. Even at night. Stay hydrated. One of John's random facts popped into her consciousness. Somehow sharks have 4 rows of teeth, one inside the other, to more quickly disembowel their prey. Tinkerbell! She cried. Help! The fairy hovered in the air, watching the commotion thoughtfully. Or could it have been disinterestedly? Jesus. Slimy, strong hands grabbed Winnie's waist and tugged down, but the mermaid didn't manage to pull her entirely underwater. She had expected the human girl to be as light and lithe as one of them. So the next mermaid leapt out of the water and landed with her hands on Wendy's shoulders, trying to push her down from above. Once again, this mermaid wasn't strong or heavy enough to do much besides dunk Wendy for a moment. But they were learning. Hands and mouths grabbed at her body and dress, pulling and pushing and trying to drown her with their combined efforts. Tinkerbell! Wendy sputtered. The fairy hanging above the lagoon shook her head slowly. That was the last thing Wendy saw. The last thing was the fairy flying off away into the jungle. Tinkerbell had given up on the human girl in her hopeless situation. Wendy went under. Alright, we are at chapter 14. Chapter 14. We're at chapter 15. I'm gonna take there's a little break. Oh, yeah, I bet. Oh, no. No. Okay. I did not know that could happen. Well, if you see me, you see me. So, hi. Yes, I am in my pajamas because it is 11:05. Oh man, give me another drink. I just needed to drink some water before I get really get into this. All right, hold on. Okay, almost with. All right. Ooh. All right. Let's get into it. Chapter 16. The Drying Off Girls. Wendy's thoughts as the water closed above her head were a strange mix of things. Primarily, it was panic and survival, her body thrashing and arms circling, mouth shut tight, trying to keep from breathing in the water that was now all around her. And obviously, her mind touched a bit on her rapidly approaching an inevitable death. But there was also a surprising amount of disappointment. Oh, dear Lord, excuse me, remember this? Also the waiter. I had a burp. But there was also a surprising amount of disappointment. She and Tinkerbell had finally been starting to make a connection, even if it was just over a common goal. The fairy had given her pixie dust to fly, and then the little thing had revealed herself to be no better than any of the other heartless members of the Neverland pirates, crystal monsters, murderous mermaids. She was utterly selfish, only concerned with her own problems and adventures. Wendy couldn't hold her breath any longer. She opened her mouth and the water was suddenly clear of mermaids, and the weight holding her down was gone. She popped up to the surface like a child's toy in a bath, free of all hands, tails, mouths, and other impedimenta, I guess. Coughing and sputtering as quietly as she could, she sucked down. Hmm? She sucked down great painful gulps of air. Oh, okay. No one attacked her. She kicked to the side of the lagoon, muscles screaming. Whatever happened, she had to get out of the water before the mermaids returned. She was almost too weak to pull herself up onto the ledge and scrape the sides of her legs raw while scrambling for a good foothold. Once finally up, her muscles and lungs desperately wanted her to lie there and recover. But Wendy forced herself to roll until she was good arm lengths away from the water and clear of any sneaky vines. She took many amazing breaths while looking up at the sky. It was an intense deep blue, and the palm fronds were black against the sky. It was bliss just to be alive. Even the little clouds of gnats hovering around her face didn't bother her. Anyway, they were sort of cute, with what looked like giant red and yellow feathers trailing from their heads and behinds. Eventually, she recovered enough to sit up. Salt water poured indelicately out her nose and down the back of her throat, burning it even more. Water sloshed in her ears dizzyingly. She hadn't known better, but the way her head was aching, she would have thought there was salt water up in her brains, too. The mermaids were all still there, roiling in the water, lashing their tails, whipping up foam, fighting each other. "It's mine!" the purple one cried. She was no longer so queenly or statedly upon her boulder throne. She was in the water with the rest of them, wide mouth, wide mouth even wider with toothly glee, holding up what looked like a piece of fruit, something oranges and elongated like a banana. "No, it's mine!" The red hair leapt out of the water like a dolphin and snatched it out of her hands. Two more mermaids dove after her, so the roiling re-begun. Tinkerbell hovered out of harm's way above the water, shaking her head disgustingly. She had another piece of fruit in her hands, a small red thing, like an oversized cherry. Now Wendy understood. Legends told of how mermaids craved fruit, because there was nothing like it in the sea. They would trade pearls and gems and long-lost treasures for a simple apple according to old sea chanties the boys used to sing. Tinkerbell had managed to distract the mermaids and make them turn on each other just by pelting them with bananas, like a mean child at a zoo. Oh, well done. Wendy tried to cry. It's the last chapter, girl, if you don't get it together. Wendy tried to say aloud. It came out like a rasping whisper. She coughed and more water came out, along with a thin trickle of blood. Nothing serious, she decided, being a practical girl, not prone to flights of panic or hypochondria. Oh my god, what is this? I'm sorry, there was something on me and it was bothering me. It's not there anymore, but ugh. It wasn't tuberculosis or cancer. It was just a result of her throat being scraped raw. But the taste and feel of it combined with the salt water threatened her already turbulent stomach. Despite the whisper, Tinkerbell, with her fairy ears, had heard what she said, or at least caught the tone of it. Her eyes widened in surprise. That was very clever. Very, very clever, Wendy said, her voice slowly gaining volume. Good show. Tinkerbell blushed and gave a timid smile. The purple-haired the pur- girl did not say get it together. The purple-haired mermaid below took the distraction as an opportunity. She leapt high into the air to snatch the cherry thing that the fairy held. Tinkerbell buzzed straight up. Oh my sweet baby Jesus! Tinkerbell buzzed straight up out of reach, dropping the fruit as ballless as she went. The mermaid caught it and laughed with glee. Wendy glared daggers at the sea creatures as she wrung out her dripping, tangled, sullen hair. These were the majestical these were the majestic beings she had imagined brushing it. You're quite literally the worst, she growled. The worst. The mermaid took a salacious bite out of the cherry and grinned at her wickedly. The rest of the mermaids calmed down, the last of the fruit having been torn into several pieces and devoured by the lucky or the most vicious ones. We were just having a little fun, the pink-haired mermaid said with a pout. Fun, that's all, the green-haired one said, floating on her back. We were only trying to drown you, the red-haired one said innocently. As I said, Minnie said flatly, the worst. Tinkerbell, dang. Tinkerbell flew over her, careful to avoid the reaching hands of the mermaids. She blanched when she saw the raw skin and sheets of blood on the human girl's legs. Wendy grimaced and ripped off a wide strip of hem from her already bedraggled, skirt and carefully dabbed at the wounds. The salt water was, if not sterile, then at least safer than anything coming out of the jungle. Once her legs were clean, she tore the makeshift bandage into two, wrapping one around each leg, and tied them neatly. We came here to get your help in finding your friend, she said when she was done, in saving your land. We know where Peter Pan's shadows. We know where Peter Pan's shadow is, and came here looking for him so we can get it back. And also, it didn't matter that their entire world was being threatened by psychotic pirates. The mermaids only heard or cared about one thing. Peter Pan? They paused whatever they were doing at his name, bobbing in the water like floats on a fishing line. Why didn't you say you were here for Peter Pan? One of them asked. I did, Wendy barked angrily, so unlike herself that Peter Pan, that Tinkerbell blew a couple feet away in surprise. You were too busy trying to lure me into the water to listen, you horrible murdering fishwives. We didn't know it was about Peter Pan. They began to dreamily glide and drift through the water. We know he lost his shadow. He hasn't been the same without it. So sad, our Peter. We'll have him get it back, and then he'll be happy again. Wendy gritted her teeth, trying to control her temper. All right, you can start by telling us where Peter is. We were told he came here. He did, the red-haired mermaid said, as serious as any toddler telling an actual truth. He always comes here when he's sad. We cheer him up. We make him happy again. Tinkerbell grew red in the face. Literally, red, literally glowing, and her wispy brows became thunderheads. All right, yes, good, whatever, Wendy said quickly. She didn't want to hear any more either, honestly. What a little harem he had here in Neverland. When was that? He came when the first moon was a tiny sickle, the green-haired one said thoughtfully, putting a fetching finger to her lip, deep in thought. An ickle-sickle, the red-haired giggled. And he left 2 mornings later. No time at all with us this time. So boring. So sad. All right, please, stop. Tinkerbell, how long ago was that? I'm afraid I'm quite unfamiliar with the phases of the moon here. Moons, I suppose. All she knew, time ran backward, or made no sense at all. Tinkerbell cocked her head, thinking, then jingled 4 times. 4 days ago. That's bad news, Wendy said grimly. He could be anywhere by now. Did he mention at all where he was going? Yes, the purple-haired one said grandly, trying to regain her original poise. He said he was going to petition the first. I was like, did I read that right? I did. What the hell does that mean? Guess we better find out. At this, everything became silent. The mermaid stopped chattering and bobbing. The jungle noises faded into the background. Tinkerbell shuddered. Even the waterfowl seemed subdued. All right, then. That's something, Wendy said, trying to sound bright despite the apparent dire connotations of the mermaid's words. And where do we find the first? Hopefully, one of the mermaids said as she turned a lazy barrel roll. You don't, and they never find you. Helpful as always, Wendy said, when he stood up to wring out the rest of her skirts. Thank you for the information, and who knows, if it turns out to be useful, I may not direct the pirates to your lagoon after we dump them. Jake, why you gotta be stuck? Oh, you're so mean, the pink-haired mermaid cried in dismay. Really? Are you kidding me? Wendy demanded. She felt a tiny tap on her hand. Tinkerbell squeezed her finger and shook her head. It's not worth it. Mindy realized the little fairy was right. If Tinkerbell, who had just as much, if not more, reason to hate these mermaids than Wendy, could walk away, well, so could she. Good day, she growled, with as much dignity as she could muster, feeling her dress drip-drop in tatters and strings behind her legs scandalously bare but for the bandages that now wrapped them. Wendy marched into the jungle, unsure of the direction she was expecting. She unsure of the direction she was going, except that it was away from the mermaids. Besides her was someone beside her was someone who might not be her friend yet, but at least didn't seem to want to kill her, which was beginning to seem like a very rare thing indeed in Neverland. Alright, so that was chapter 16. Let's see. Because there is like a little meanwhile thing. Let's see how long it is. It goes from 13 to 24. That's like 10 pages. Normally I would read it, but I am starting to get very tired. So we will start off at 16.5. So yeah, we will get back uh read back at 16.5, because whenever I see those meanwhile chapters, I don't actually count them as a actual chapter. I count them as like a point five type deal because they're very short. So yeah, that's where we will start off. Um, so far from what we've seen in Wendy's story, this is just in case I forget to uh, do tomorrow's recording or maybe next Monday's recording, whichever one happens. Um, so far from what we've seen, we have learned that, who was it? Skipper is a girl. She pretended to be a boy. All the lost boys know that she's a girl. Peter Pan is the only one that doesn't know. Because he was only taking boys from the orphanage to go to Neverland to become lost boys. Skipper changed her name so that Peter Pan would come for her, thinking that she was a boy, and he still doesn't know. We know that now that it's Slightly that Peter Pan is mad at, because Slightly wants things to change. He wants to do different things, and Peter Pan associates that with wanting to grow up, so he's kind of mad at that. We met the mermaids. I did not know that the mermaids could talk. They don't talk in the actual cartoon. Well, yeah, they don't talk in the actual movie at all. So it's surprising to me to read them actually talking. So that's a shock. Um, we met the mermaids. The mermaids were easily distracted by fruit, which same, same. And I feel like Wendy is at this point in time where she's just like over everybody. Like, you know what? F you, F you, F your mama too, F you. And she's just like, you know what? Forget you, forget your mama, forget you, and forget you too, even though I like your hair. Forget you. I hope you get, I hope your hair get mad at. Like, that's just how I feel like Wendy's at right now. But yeah, like I said, I will try to remember, try not to get too tired, because I do plan on doing something tomorrow. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But yeah. Thank you for tuning in to yeah. Thank you for tuning in to my stream, to my reading. Even though there's nobody that came to my stream, but thank you anyway. And I will see you guys tomorrow, hopefully. leave a like. If you're watching this on YouTube, leave a like, leave a comment. I do have a book on the two fairies from, if you've seen Tinkerbell, like the one where she has a twin, and we met that leader fairy of the winter, and we meet and we know the other. I do have that book. I can't remember their names right now, but I do have that book. If you guys do want me to read that, leave a comment saying so. Otherwise, I will just continue on with reading the other twisted Disney books and get to it eventually. Maybe so. Okay, thank you. And good night. Stay hydrated. Eat food. And don't try to lie and say that you did it. Coffee is not a meal. And this is who drinks boba without the boba. I drink milk tea. Okay. I'm gonna say this comes from somebody who drinks milk tea because I can't have boba.